Greetings, everyone. Let's see. Can everybody hear me okay? Hi there. All right. So I'm hoping everybody's having a wonderful week. We are going... Oh, that's okay. I knew what you meant, Willow. Let's start out with our meditation, and we will just close our eyes if that's an appropriate thing to do where you are. We'll just take some deep, relaxing breaths. And as we relax our body and our mind, we picture ourselves again on top of a beautiful mountain. And we're gathered in the center of a circular sacred grove of trees. And in the center of our circle, a sacred bonfire blazes forth, and it lights us and the grove up with a golden light. Feeling the mountain air, the warmth of the fire, and noticing that that light burns away everything that is unlike perfect love and perfect trust. And we are grateful for the time that we are spending together today. And we invite into this sacred space any teachers or angels, deities, or sense of higher power that is most appropriate to us. That we be guided as we walk upon our way of the craft. Thank you very much. Together we say, blessed be. Okay, I hope everybody can hear me okay. If not, let me know on the little chat thing. All right, so I hope we've had a good week. I'm assuming everybody probably did their spell this week. If you didn't, that's okay. Try to get it done before the full moon. And I'd like to see if we have any questions before we go on, because I know there were some questions on the forum. I probably should have pulled those up, but I didn't. So if anybody has any questions, if they could go ahead and ask those now, because I'd like to get them answered if you have anything that's uncertain.
Hello, Ariel.
Yes.
This is Crystal. I had a question about the waxing spell.
Yes.
And did you say that it was kind of like one time and done?
No, that's the waning spell. You can repeat the waxing spell as many times as you want. It's just that you don't have to worry about the timing except for on the very first day that you do it. The rest of the days you can do it anytime you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, are you feeling better?
Oh, yes, thanks for asking.
Oh,
I'm
good.
Getting better every day, and I'm up and going. And
oh, good. Well,
I got to catch up on the work and feel really good.
Oh, good. Well, take good care of yourself.
Thank you.
Yes. Who else has questions? I've had some really nice comments. I'm not going to out anybody, but I've had some really nice emails from people who have already started getting some pretty fabulous manifestations. So I'm glad that people are starting to see the results of their magic. If you aren't, don't worry. Sometimes it takes a little while, just depending on the type of seed that you've planted for that to come to fruition. You should be able to see some germination of your spell, at least in the way that you are feeling about the situation fairly rapidly. And if not, then, just give it a little time. if you're not seeing any indication after more than a couple of weeks, then we'll perhaps need to troubleshoot things for you. Perhaps there's something that went awry, and that's okay. That's part of it all, I was talking to. Was I talking to? Maybe I was talking to my mind. I don't remember if I was talking to somebody or I was thinking this, but I just remember, the difference between sitting in a French class and really getting good at French conversation and actually going to Paris and speaking. Very different. And if you don't expect that you're going to have some mistakes and some setbacks when you are thrust in conversational daily life Paris versus a nice class where everything is sort of, artificial, then you're in for an interesting experience. And for people that say, well, unless things work out perfectly and there's no mistakes, then I don't want to do it. You're never going to speak French, and you're never going to do magic. So it's okay. If things go awry, we fix it and we try it again, and you just keep doing it until you get better. And it's just like any other craft. There's nothing different about witchcraft versus other crafts. It takes practice, it takes skill, and skill only happens from doing it over and over and over again and fixing the mistakes that you make. So that's my only job here, is to give you tools and to help you coach you through them. If your technique is off. All right. So, and the other thing that you'll notice is and I think this is the best way to work. This is definitely the way I work. But, I'm sorry, Simone. Should the incantation be included in the spell board, or is it best left off of it? No. You don't want to include the incantation unless it's very short. What you include on the spell board is the actual statement of what you are manifesting. So if it's a new, Honda Civic 2015 silver colored, that's what you would write in runes. And then your incantation is not put on the spell board. That's something that you actually can chant over the spell board, or in any other. We're going to go into some other spells today, other types of spells. But no, you don't need to write the incantation on the spell board. But I do like it in runes. If you want to do both runes and English on your spell board because you relate to it better, that's fine. But remember, you have a separate sheet of paper that is lists of all of the attributes you want. You want, whatever. You want it to be a hybrid. You want it to have navigation. You want it to have, auto parking functions. You want it to have the sound system upgrade. You want it to be, the color of the carpet and the color of the seats. You don't put all that on your spell board. You put the picture of it, if you can, on your spell board, but you don't put all of the details on that. That's on a separate sheet of paper. And you want to go over those periodically, and especially before you do your spell. And also the spiritual essences. What will having this thing do for you? You're going to get a sense of freedom. You're going to get a sense of efficiency. Maybe you'll, whatever the spiritual essence that it's going to give you. Everybody's different, but it's not just transportation, but what is transportation giving you? It's usually a sense of freedom. It's a sense of luxury. Maybe it's a sense of accomplishment, whatever that is. So all of those essences are on that other sheet of paper that you can put in your magical diary if you want to, or in your BOS, or I just call it a workbook. The witch's workbook, where you just put all that stuff. And I just keep it all, I keep it all in one place. That way I don't have just like loose sheets all over the place. Some people like loose leaf binders though, and that's actually kind of a cool idea, because then you can just mix and match. You can take stuff out of the book and put stuff back in the book, and you can organize it with tabs if you want to, all that kind of stuff. But definitely you want to keep clarity on what it is that you're attracting and manifesting on the physical level and the pragmatic level, and also on the spiritual level, what it's bringing you, why you want it. So both of those things are important, but you don't need to include those on the board. Now, the spell board is one whopper of a wonderful tool to use, and the basic attracting spell is an amazingly effective tool to use because you're actually using planetary power of magnetism. You're actually there, like electromagnetism. You're generating the electricity through your desire, and then you are actually creating a magnet to pull that energy into your body. You're creating a thought form. You're sending the thought form up that cone, up into the planetary genius is what I call it, but the spirit, the angel, whatever you're going to call it, the God, the deity, whatever, and having them refine the energy and allowing it to turn into astral substance or magic dust, whatever you want to call it, proto-matter, Eli used to call it, and having it come back to you and re-enter your aura as that magnetic energy so that you are actually a walking talisman for the thing that it is that you're trying to. It's a wonderful, wonderful process. It really works great. Now we're going to talk about some other kinds of spells that you can do as well. But if I were you, I would definitely keep the spell board and the attraction spell up on your priority list of in your what you use, because in your toolbox, because they probably, I think, are some of the most efficient ways of working. But I do want to talk about some other things too. Like I was going to say before, the way I like to work is a combination of working on, for lack of a better word, spiritual and emotional sides of things, and also on the technical side of things. So I like to have a nice balance between doing things like the mirror work and the waning moon flips and those kinds of things, where you're actually working on your emotional body and on your deep mind's habit patterns, more on the mental, emotional, and a spiritual level. But then I also like to really work on the technical side of things, where you're really getting clear about the correspondences and the techniques of magic that are very powerful. So when you can combine those two, you get a better result. Because on the one side you've got your witches that are all technique, and then you've got your law of attraction people, that are all mental, emotional. And really, a good witch is both. You do both of those things. You have to have both sides of that. And I've always worked that way. Okay, so let's, before we get too technical, because I am going to get rather technical in a minute, I want to talk about are there any other questions about last week and the attraction spells before I go on to the next topic? Nope, okay. Please just butt in if there are.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, who's this?
This is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. I guess it's more of a technical question.
Good.
So I'm thinking about, like, when you have your oil that you made and maybe a crystal, do you do anything like make an acknowledgement to the energy within them that you're working with, or do you just kind of have them on the altar? Or
well, we're actually going into more of that stuff today.
Okay.
So it's perfect timing. Yeah, I figured that people were going to be asking, well, what do I do with all this stuff? So yeah, it's kind of what today's class is about. So it's you're in perfect timing. So we will definitely get that. And if I don't answer all your questions, make sure you ask me toward the end of the of this session today because I think I probably will. We're going to talk a lot about that.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great.
Absolutely. Sure. Good. I'm glad you're on the same wavelength as I am. All right. So, any other questions? Okay. So we need to, let's look at, before we get technical, let's look at the other side of things today. We got to look at the energy of emotion. It's very powerful energy. Emotion is very powerful energy. So when there is a desire or when there is a condition that you're wanting to get rid of or to upgrade or to change in some way. So you're either wanting to pull something in that doesn't exist, or you're wanting to get rid of something that does exist, or you're wanting to change something that exists into something else. All of that is what we work magic on. It's pretty much it. Either you want something new, you want to get rid of something old, or you want to change something, alter something that is. One thing that people forget to do is they get messed up on cause and effect. Cause and effect is the granddaddy of all the Hermetic principles. With everything that exists is the result of a cause. And so, I mean, if you can get real esoteric and look at maybe for prime cause as being the Godhead, but you know that gets beyond human conception. But just from what we to work magic, every effect has a cause, and every cause has an effect. There's nothing there's no true vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. So all vacuums will be filled. So you can't do something without some sort of reaction. It's similar to the law of what I call resonance. Okay, so when you, for instance, like when you fall in love with somebody, they're not making you love them because they're sending love to you. When the two of you are in love together, you are responding to their love and they are responding to your love. And together you are resonating. So this is how, like when people are worried about things like attack magic and hexing and things like that, they get this idea that what happens is, and even sometimes the hexers think that this is what they're doing, but they're not. They think, okay, they're taking some energy and they're shooting it out and sending negative energy to a person to attack them. And that's not really possible. You can't really do that. I mean, it doesn't work like that. What happens is they set up an experience so that you will respond to the energy and create the negativity in your own experience by the law of resonance. You will start to vibrate at the resonance that they are creating in your vicinity. So think of it this way. If somebody's hypnotizing you, like a stage hypnotist, they're not sending a thought to you from their thought to you that says, act like a chicken. They are suggesting to you that you are acting like a chicken, and you decide to act like a chicken because your own mind is so suggestible to allow that to happen. Now, imagine if somebody was somebody used, this is a great example. Imagine that somebody that was very suggestible was on an ocean liner and they were feeling fine. But somebody came up to them and said, "Ooh, you look sick. Are you okay? You look like you're getting seasick." And they were like, "No, I think I'm okay." "Oh, no, you look pretty sick. You should lie down." And if they're suggestible enough, they'll start creating symptoms for themselves where they feel sick, where they were fine before. Whereas if somebody, like say, somebody that's been at sea many, many times, maybe they're a sailor, and somebody comes up to them and tries that nonsense on them. Ooh, you're looking really sick. You're getting seasick. They'll either laugh at them because they're like, you're crazy. I don't get seasick. Or they might even get annoyed with them. It's like, what are you talking about? I never get seasick. I'm fine. So one of them was suggestible and the other one wasn't. So the one that wasn't suggestible, they were in a particular frame of mind or psychic energy where they did not allow their emotional and mental energy to resonate with the emotional mental energy of the person that was trying to suggest something to them. That's what a hex is. A hex is basically somebody is suggesting telepathically to another person, you don't feel good, or you're accident prone, or you're unlucky, or you're dying, And if the will of the hexer is strong enough to bury into the burrow, I should say, into the deep mind of the victim most strongly enough, then that victim may very well create those experiences for themselves. So that's why when people talk about attack magic, it's not that somebody's attacking you psychically like with a lightning bolt and you're getting it. It's what they're really doing is they are suggesting to you something and you're creating that for yourself. But that's also what's happening with us, what we do to ourselves. So when you have something that you want to get rid of or you want to change or you want to attract, you look at the emotional energy that you're experiencing right now and you act as though that is causative. So for instance, this is a very, very common one. Somebody's in a lot of credit card debt and they feel very guilty. What they think is that the credit card debt caused them guilt. But reality states that guilt manifested as credit card debt. So what they have to do is they have to look at what they are thinking as the emotional manifestation of the experience and change the emotion so that they are able to create the new result. You don't wait for the result to come to you and then you'll be happy. You create the emotion and then you do your spell. So you don't want to get into doing a lot of spell work feeling desperate and unhappy. You want to, that's why I give you those waning moon flips so that you can start to change that emotional energy around right away. That way you're in a position of power to change the circumstances. So, the fastest way to do that is through gratitude. The fastest way to clean up and rebalance your emotional energy is through gratitude. So before, during, and after every spell, you want to go for the gratitude as quickly as possible as if it's already happened. So what would you be feeling if all of your debts were paid? Gratitude. So you want to go for the gratitude, and then you're in a very powerful position to do a spell to get those debts paid. What would you be feeling if all of a sudden the pain in your body was gone? Gratitude. So you want to go feeling that gratitude first, and then go for the healing spell, etc., etc., etc. Regardless of whether it's waning moon magic or waxing moon magic, gratitude is probably one of your best friends. And I've included in your homework packet today a meditation on gratitude that is just one thing that you can do. But also in your homework assignment, I've given you some writing homework. Woohoo! We wanted more stuff to do, Ariel. Thank you for that. So what I'd like for you to do is to start. This is nothing new. We've heard this before, but start a gratitude journal. after I pick up all the papers I just lost. What you want to do is write down things every single day for which you are grateful. Carve time out to do this. Take time to do this every single day. Don't think them, write them. Write them down. Writing is a magical act. Writing is one of the most magical acts you will ever encounter. All spells going back to whenever have included writing, whether it's runes or whatever, or hieroglyphics. Write it down. Write it down. It becomes real. So write down a list of the things for which you are grateful. It doesn't have to be big things or small things or medium things, all things. I'm grateful for air. I'm grateful for that I have food. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for my green jumper. Whatever. There's nothing that doesn't deserve your gratitude. And your goal is to, within a week's time, have a minimum of 100 items. A minimum of 100 items, but go for more. If you can go for 200, that would be better. So carve out time to do that. And between that and then the cool thing about doing daily gratitude like that is you are in a state where the gratitude is more accessible, and so it's easier to get started. It's like priming the pump for spell casting. So get that going this week. Any questions on gratitude or emotions? So you've got to get the emotion started that you want to be in existence as a result of your spell manifesting. You got to get your cause and effect flipped. Don't wait for the manifestation and then you're feeling grateful, then you're feeling happy, then you're feeling prosperous, then you're feeling healthy, whatever those things are. You feel those emotions first, even if you have to fake it till you make it, and then you do your spell. Now, if you can't feel the emotions for what you're working on, your tool to use is gratitude, because through gratitude, all the other emotions are available. Because if you look at it, there's only two kinds of emotions. There's relaxed emotions and there's tense emotions. Tense emotions are not conducive to magic. Relaxed emotions are. So gratitude automatically gives you a sense of relaxation. So when you flip over to the gratitude, all of those other emotions are much more available to you, because you can't swallow and yawn at the same time. You can't inhale and exhale at the same time. Even people that do circular breathing with didgeridoo, they're doing micro inhales, micro exhales at all times. So you can't do both. You can't be tense and relaxed at the same time. So once you are in a state of gratitude, all of those other emotions are much more accessible to you than if you aren't. So that's your tool. That's your fastest tool. So should you include those things that you don't have yet? Yes. So if you're doing a spell on your list, I would stick with the stuff that you're grateful for in your life right now, but in your spell, be grateful for the thing as if it's already happened. So in the spell, you definitely want to. That's when you're using that flip. You're going into a gratitude that you have the money, or that you have the health, or that you have the lover, or whatever you're going for. But on your list, stick with the stuff that you're grateful for right now. Even this, and pretty soon you'll notice that you are going to start being able to be grateful for things that you thought were bad, because you see the lessons in them. Oh, sure. Yeah, you're very welcome. And you're going to see that your sphere of influence and your sphere of gratitude are very closely linked. So when you're able to be grateful for things that seemed like that you always thought were bad, you're going to notice that the things that you always thought were out of reach for you are much closer. It's a very powerful way to start expanding your sphere of influence. That gratitude and the ability to have success, because you're grateful. If you're doing those lists of things in your life, that's success, 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 success. You're showing yourself over and over and over again how great you are, because from a magical point of view, you're responsible for all those things, even the air that you're breathing, because from a magical perspective, your thoughts and your deep mind are creating that experience for you. You, from an esoteric point of view, you chose the parents that you have, you chose the life that you're living, you chose your gender, you chose your health, you chose your financial circumstances. All of those things, from an esoteric point of view, whether you agree with that or believe it or not, it doesn't matter. If you just think about it as being a framework to work in for a moment, then when you start to think in terms of gratitude, your deep mind sees it as, look at how powerful you are. Look at how successful you are. Look at all of the amazing things you can do. That's how your deep mind sees it, because your deep mind is not the same kind of intellect that you are. Your deep mind doesn't rationalize over things. So it doesn't argue. It just accepts. So as you start to show your deep mind the things for which you're grateful, your deep mind assumes that you are a very powerful person. And so it stops putting up all those walls. And so your sphere of influence increases very, very rapidly that way. Okay, so anything about that before we move on to the spelly stuff, the witchy stuff, the technical stuff. All right, you may want to get onto the web and get into the WBB download site where you download your homework, and download the two files. There's one called Basic Spell Enhancements, and there's the other one is called Houses, Planets, and Elements, I believe. Houses, Planets, and Elements. I'm going to talk about the houses, planets, and elements first. You'll notice that every house in the zodiac is naturally, the natural zodiac is ruled by an astrological sign, and every astrological sign is ruled by a planet. Now, we are concerning ourselves in this class with the 7 planets of old. Those are the basic nuts and bolts of all magic, are those 7 planets. We're not dealing with Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto. Even though some people don't consider Pluto, I don't really consider Pluto a planet either. It's more of a mini baby planet. It's kind of a planet-esque. It's kind of a planetoid. But regardless of all of that, we aren't dealing with those at all. What we are dealing with are the planets that are ruled by the 7 days of the week. So as a result of that, Saturn does double duty on Capricorn and Aquarius. Venus does double duty on Taurus and Libra. And also, Mercury does double duty on Virgo and Gemini. So that's just the way that is. But you'll notice that when you're looking at the houses, that what's different about that is the element ruled the sign is in. So, for instance, Mars rules Scorpio and Aries in the old system. So Mars as a fire element is Aries and the first house. But Mars as a water planet is Scorpio and the 8th house. They're both very martial energies, but one is water and the other is fire. So it's a different it's a much different way that Mars will present itself. So what I would like for you to do this week is to find a spell, and it's not something that you have to. It's not a spell that you have to do right away. I mean, if it's an attracting kind of spell, you can start working on this now so that you can do it in the next waxing moon. But you can also do a waning moon version of it. So what I want you to do is find something on your goal list that is high on your desire scale and within reason of your sphere of influence. And decide what house it belongs in. You'll notice that in the first house is Mars, so you can go back to all your Mars qualities from the old. I think it was the second week I put those. I think it was, but you have all those, the planetary correspondences. So go to those planetary correspondences and look at Mars, okay? But now Mars can be fiery. So that's going to be think of what fire is. I also gave you your elemental correspondences. And so Mars and fire will sit in the first house. So that's appearance, personality, temperament, general disposition. Okay? So all of the fiery aspects of Mars are on that first house. So you can start expanding on that list, right? So negative things, temper tantrums, bullies, all that kind of stuff. Just you can start making lists of where would I put that? Would I put that in the first house, fire, right? Now Mars' sex drive in the first house would be one that would be very fiery, and so remember, fire goes hot and dies out. But sex drive in the 8th house in water goes much deeper. So it's much more of an emotional sex drive, right? Because water rules the emotions. If you look at your elemental correspondence sheet that I gave you several weeks ago. Also, we covered the elements in the basic, which is primer. So you may want to go back and review those. So we're starting to look at not only the planet, but the element. And that's why I like you to use the houses, because it helps you as like a little file cabinet. Where does it go? The 8th house is the other Mars house. So the 8th house, you'll see, I just put a few keywords. You can expand on these on your own. Think of Scorpio. Think of the sign of Scorpio. But traditionally, the 8th house deals with other people's money. It deals with inheritances. It definitely is sexual. It deals with hidden, occult. Therefore, it also deals with surgery. Think of Mars as being cutting. Mars being the knife. It cuts, but it's water, so it's going under the surface of things for surgeries. That which is hidden. It deals with death. It's one of the houses of death and regeneration, reincarnation. So that's why I want you to take some time with this and really sit with this, because it's not something that you're going to just get right away. You need to meditate on which house your desire fits in. Therefore, which planet and element. Now, we always talk about Jupiter and Sun as being the money planets, but really, if you think about it, Venus works best with money because Venus is green and Venus is Taurus in the 2nd house, and the 2nd house is the money house. And that's why, even though what Jupiter does is Jupiter is the planet of expansion and higher learning and higher education and aspirations. So Jupiter is great if you want to expand your money. So if you're thinking of expansion, the 10th house or Capricorn and Saturn is good when you're dealing with money as it results as it comes from working hard in your career and your ambitions in the world. But as far as actual liquid financial assets and cash flow, that really is the 2nd house. And that is why I think a lot of money spells are misplaced, Because if you're looking for cash flow, liquid assets type of cash flow, it really belongs in the second house, which is Venus and Earth. Venus and Earth. So most people don't talk about money as being Venus and Earth, but Venus and Earth is green, and green is the color of money. So it works extremely well. But again, it depends on what the money is all about. If you're talking about fixed assets and other people's money and inheritances and things like that, then you're not talking about the second house at all. You're talking about the 8th house. You're talking about Scorpio. It's a Martial thing. It's a Mars thing, believe it or not. Mars and water. It's going to start to expand and blow your mind a little bit, because we think we understand these planets, but they're a lot more multifaceted than we realize. And that's why studying houses is extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. So let's keep going through the houses. But remember, Venus and Earth is not just money and assets. It's also luxury, which is another thing. If you're looking for money to have a much more luxurious life, the second house is your baby for that spell. But it also can be vanity, you know. It can also be not necessarily bad vanity. I mean, it could be bad vanity if you're banishing something, but it could be beauty products and beauty regimes and things like that. So, and then remember your third house is Mercury, but it's Mercury as Mercury is in air, because it's air is naturally Gemini fits in the third house the best. So Mercury represents your mentalities and quick transportation. That's why car spells are great if you do them in the car spells are, I think, one of the places that car spells work well. But there's more than one way to do these things. You obviously there's not just one way. But I think car spells work really well in the third house, Mercury and air, because it deals with transportation, writing, basic education, the reading, writing, arithmetic, all of that kind of stuff. Not higher education, but basic education, affairs of the mind, letter writing, correspondences. It deals with siblings, all your neighbors. So if you got a troublesome neighbor that you're trying to mend fences with, Mercury and air work really well together. Okay, so then your fourth house, and then I've given you some colors. I wouldn't use necessarily these as your astral colors if you're combining this stuff with it, because you can still do all of this and then go back and do that basic attraction spell or the basic banishing spell. You can still do this. This is just another way to refine how you're doing things, but it's also going to show you what's coming up in a minute. But I wouldn't use these colors necessarily as the astral colors. I would stick with the astral colors for that stuff, and use these for any of the accentuating colors that you're doing with or if you're not using that attraction or banishing spell, the meditation, if you're doing something else, if you're just doing a candle spell or another type of spell, you can use these colors in that. So, but anyway, so the fourth house is the moon and Cancer, and that's the only place that the moon exists. There's no secondary place for the moon in the zodiac. So that's your home, your family, your parents, but especially your mother, especially your mom, or motherhood, or fertility, or goddess stuff, the divine feminine. Think of like a crab. That's what Cancer is anything that's enclosed and protected. So the womb is enclosed and protected. A tomb, a grave, a home, a cove, any of those kinds of things are protected. It's another place that the occult lives, but especially as it relates to the emotions and to the moon and moon magic, which is all magic is basically moon magic for us because we use the phases of the moon. The moon is always focusing the rays of all other planets onto the Earth, including the sun. It's the closest of even though it's not technically a planet, it's the closest what we call planets. It's the closest celestial body to the Earth. So it's the one that we can work with the most easily as far as focusing the powers of other planets. So even though you're not doing a moon spell per se, you are still focused on the phases of the moon. The fifth house, we talk about, it's funny, we talk about Jupiter as being the gambling planet, but really the sun works best with gambling because the sun rules the fifth house, and the fifth house is all about gambling. Now, you'll use Jupiter for gambling if you're on a roll, if you're wanting to expand your winnings or something like that, because remember, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, but the fifth house rules not only gambling, it rules love affairs, not marriage, but love affairs, courtship, kids and children. It's the performing arts. It's theatricality, creativity, self-expression. It's your own self-image. It's also. It's not in here, but it's also just like with the on the other lists. It's success. It's a success place. Now, I'm not saying that the other keywords from the other lists are invalidated by this. I'm saying that we're looking at things in a new lens so that we're trying to refine things. You can always go back to the basic planetary correspondences. They are always going to be helpful. But when you start to focus them into the houses, then you're able to start to do other kinds of spell work, which is what we're going to get into in just a moment. Your sixth house is Mercury again, but it's the Earth of Mercury. So that's more medicine. It's more medicine and healing and the healing of the body. Healing not in as far as energy healing, but like Hippocrates type of medicine, the caduceus of the medical profession. But it also deals with vitamins and body care and health regimes and yoga practices and hygiene. It's also a place of service. Remember, think of how the doctors of the world have always been the servants. They're the Hippocratic oath. They do no harm. They're only there to help. And that's why it's not in here, but pets oftentimes, small pets and small animals will go in here. Because we have to serve them. They can't take care of themselves. They require our care. Although children really are more usually in the fifth house, but children could also be in the sixth house as well. But children could also be in the fourth house because it's mothering. The children could also be in the 10th house because it's father. So it depends on your point of view of the spell, where you're coming at it from. That's where you want to stick it. So there's not one size fits all in magic, unfortunately. And even with the correspondences with the herbs and the spices and all of that, you'll see a lot of overlap. You'll see that sometimes several planets or several signs will share an ingredient, and that's okay. It's just how life is. Not everything is cut and dry. Okay, so, and then you've got your seventh house, which is Venus and air. So that's the intellectual side of Venus. But also, so think of Venus as the planet of love and of the mind. And so that's why marriages are considered a contract because there's both. There's both the planet of love and the planet and the element of intellect there. So traditionally, it's always been the house of partnerships and marriages, not only marriages, but partnerships. But that's also where you're going to see anybody that you're having beefs with in public, that everybody knows you don't get along with, they're going to show up in the seventh house. And litigations and legal things like that, where you're having problems with relationships especially on an intellectual level, that's going to show up in the seventh house. So for banishing purposes, there's always the negative side of thing that you can find where it sits. Okay, let's get through these real quick here. On the eighth house we talked about already, but that's Mars again, but that's water Mars, and that's Scorpio. Is the natural home rulership of the eighth house in the natural zodiac. Again, that's inheritances, other people's money, loans could be there. But especially if you're trying to not necessarily get somebody to loan you money that you can use, but if you're trying to control somebody's money in some way, or you're trying to get maybe if you wanted to become a career where you're a money manager, that would be a great place to be, is actually in the eighth house. You would use, it doesn't seem like you would do it until you think of it that way. Mars and water would be an excellent choice for your spell correspondences if you think of it from a house perspective. But it's also, like I said, surgery, death, reincarnation, cycles, deep commitments, oaths, pacts, joint funds, occult matters, again, will show up in here. The occult loves the water houses. Taboo, secrecy, if any secrets, good or bad, all of that stuff. All right, so then we've got the ninth house, which is a Jupiter house, but it's the fire version of Jupiter. This is total expansion. Anything you want more of that you already have, Jupiter fire is your guy, okay? So the ninth house is there. But it's also good for world travel, studying cultures. It's one of the places where study of foreign languages would be good for you, because it's higher education and it's for traveling and other cultures. Basic conversational skills might be more of a third house thing, but as far as like really mastering another language would be here. Religion, believe it or not, law as a profession, and law in general, and legal matters and lawsuits can come here as well. So again, you could look at it from a Jupiter point of view, or you could because Jupiter is the judge and jury of the solar system. But you could also see it as a seventh house thing, and with Libra is the balance of justice. So that you could do it from either perspective, whether you wanted to do it with fire and Jupiter, or whether you wanted to do it with air and Venus. It depends on the circumstance, but you have some choices. You've got. But he is the planet of good fortune. So general luck and good fortune and goodwill. That's why people do it for game of chance, because I'm not telling everybody to go out and gamble. I mean, because I don't think that's healthy. I mean, it's okay if it's fun occasionally, but that's not why we're talking about this. But the reason why Jupiter traditionally is the planet that people use for games of chance is because it's general good fortune. But it's also the planet of expansion. So if you're on a losing streak, Jupiter is not the place to go. That's when you'd want to go to the Sun or the fifth house, or maybe you'd want to go to the 10th house to get some help with your gambling addiction. So then we've been speaking of the 10th house. That's your career, your social status. It's Saturn. It's Earth. So your indebtedness. Believe it or not, real estate works really well here if it's as a fixed asset. But real estate can also be a lot of people like it in the 8th house. So for me, Saturn works really well with real estate more than Mars. But it really is you have to look at each planet as to which house you feel works better. To me, long-term real estate seems more Saturn and Earth to me than Mars and water. But anyway, so it's government as far as like the actual governance, not necessarily, but not law. So lawyers and judges would be more in the 10th house, whereas the government itself, the government as an entity, would be more in the 10th house. IRS definitely 10th house. Father. That's why a lot of people with father issues have problems with the IRS. It's because the father is ruled by this 10th house. So if you're having trouble with the IRS, you got to clean up your relationship with your father. Interesting, but it's true. Responsibility, debts, repayment, ambitions, long-term ambitions, life goals, career type life goals. 11th house is Saturn as well. In modern days, Uranus is more of the planet, but we're sticking with the 7 in this course. And I would recommend that you don't try to do Uranus magic or Neptune magic, because those planets are very difficult to deal with at first. Get your chops down on the 7 planets, and we'll be going into those other planets in other courses in the future, especially when we're dealing with angelic magic. Okay, anyway, but Aquarius is the air side of Saturn. So it's very different when you've got that element of air in there. That's when science happens. That's when major scientific breakthroughs happen. That's when odd things happen. The 11th house is is a friendlier house and that's why it's a house of friendships. Your friendships are and your acquaintances and your fraternities and your sororities, things like that. Those are more ruled by the 11th house in Aquarius. Stepchildren, that which is unusual, that which is unique, that which is sudden, would be in here. More Uranus based, but we're still sticking with Saturn. Humanitarianism, astrology as a science, and magical knowledge. The scientific side of magic is definitely an 11th house Aquarius Saturn air thing. Not mystical, occult, emotional energy. We're talking about the technical, scientific sides of magic. The more intellectual sides of things. The details of it, that works really well in the 11th house. So if you're trying to expand your magical knowledge, Saturn is actually quite a good planet for you if you're doing it from an air perspective, from an 11th house point of view. All right, and finally we've got the 12th house, which has always gotten a bad rap, and it doesn't need to. People think it's only prison and hospitals, but I mean it does rule prisons and hospitals, but that's not all. It's a culmination of the rest of the zodiac is what the 12th house is. It's mysticism. It's mystery. It's considered a collective unconsciousness of Jung. So it's where all the archetypes live as potential. So it's where you go for psychic development if you're trying to become more mediumistic and channeling and things like that. Dream interpretations, definitely. But anything to do with hospitals or institutions, prisons, any of that stuff, definitely work really well with this. This is Jupiter and water. So it's an expansion still. Jupiter is expanding, but into the unconscious. It's any kind of expansion into the unconscious and into the deeper parts of your emotional nature. below the surface level. It's where secrets come to life. Sometimes people don't even realize that they have certain assets until they mine Jupiter in the water element. And then you can find your untapped potential, secret wealth, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a lot for you to think about, and I understand this. It's not something that you're going to get overnight. This is a lifetime's worth of study and contemplation. I would recommend that you have a very good think on things when you start, but start from your goals. Don't try to master all of magic. Use your goals one at a time, and then see, what does my goal fit into planet-wise? What does my goal fit into house-wise? And therefore, as a result, what is the element? Now, if the element doesn't seem to fit your goal, then you may want to think your planet and your house, because I don't want you mixing right now. Later, that's more down the road, after you get well versed in this stuff. But if it doesn't sit in the natural rulership of a planet, the element doesn't seem right, then you're not probably, you need some more work as far as thinking about the houses and the planets. Clear as mud? All right. So once you got that, once you have an idea of what my planet, what my house, therefore what my element. The element is the result of the planet and the house. You don't start with your element in this particular case, because there's too many options. If you get to the end result and the element doesn't seem right, then you can say, well, what element does seem right? And then you can go backwards from there. That's my recommendation. If you feel more comfortable going backwards from the element, by all means, do so. You can. But don't overload yourself with confusion. Try to take it one little step at a time.